Now, in the early days of this story, it seemed like everyone wanted to hear from him, but no one did. Until now.
More than 700 rare gold Civil War era coins were found somewhere in the bluegrass. The coins date back between 1850 and 1862. It's being called the Great Kentucky Hoard.
When news of the Great Kentucky Hoard broke, it broke big. The story received extensive media attention all across the country, with everyone from the New York Times to the Washington Post to TV news networks covering it. But throughout all of this, one question, a big question, remained. What can you tell us about the farmer? Who is the person that found this?
Well, that was one of the reasons the person came to me. He wanted to, get to know me and talk about. He wanted to do something, but he wanted to stay completely confidential about everything. He didn't want people to, bug him for any reason, or also, dig up his land and things like that. So it's pretty much all, that part's confidential, and I'm just going to remain that way.
But after a couple of months of back and forth, one day I opened up an email to find 3 pages of written responses to questions from the farmer who discovered the Great Kentucky Hoard. These are the only insights anyone has heard from him, and they are fascinating. Here now is his story about how this all happened.
I was in the fields as any other normal day. I started walking a portion of the property where I had seen broken pieces of pottery and brick, strewn in a fairly confined area, when I came across the first coin, something that has happened a decent amount of times. I found my first old coin when I was maybe 9, walking the fields around my hometown looking for arrowheads. But this time, it was a little more exciting. Little did I know what that would lead to next.
I asked, when you first looked down in the dirt and saw the coins, what was going through your mind? Did you realize the enormity of what you had just found and that this was a life-changing event?
I initially found the 1856 seated Liberty half dollar, probably 20 to 30 feet from where the hoard was located. I would have never believed what came next. Things that only happen in dreams. When I continued walking and saw the glint of gold, a thick, reeded edge. When I pulled the coin from the ground, I was astonished when I realized I was holding a $20 double eagle from the 1860s. After I flipped the first clump of dirt, over the next 45 minutes to an hour, the coins kept coming. I knew it was hundreds. I initially guessed around 300 to maybe 400 coins. To my surprise, when I got home and started counting, the total was over 800 coins, 770 of which were gold.
I asked, walk me through the days after the discovery. What were you thinking?
I knew right away that I had made an enormous discovery. I hadn't heard of such a find in the U.S. in ages. I spent hours researching each coin and the different years and varieties to check for rarities and key dates. After researching the key dates for the double eagle $20, I realized I had not one, but 18 of one of the rare dates, the 1863 20s. This is when my head began to spin, and I knew I needed help.
Has this changed the way you walk around and look at things?
Surprisingly, not much. As I said, I have spent many years wandering the fields and riverbanks looking for anything that catches the eye. My father did it before me. My great-grandmother had one of the most incredible museum-worthy collections of arrowheads, all found walking cultivated land and the banks of the rivers. I guess maybe it's in my bones. I have always been extremely fascinated with discovering items from the past.
And finally, any advice you'd offer to treasure hunters or anyone else out there captivated by this story?
Keep your eyes out and never stop looking. I never even imagined I would find one gold coin in my entire life, let alone something so significant it has its own hoard name. There are hundreds of stories of lost treasure, hidden stashes from bandits, and just the superstitious wealthy old guys who didn't trust the banks.
How those coins ended up in the ground is a story lost to the ages. But that doesn't mean there aren't lots of theories on why more than $3 million in gold coins were buried in a field somewhere in Kentucky.
So I think that the coins that were found are part of one of the 4 caches that are supposedly in Kentucky that John Hunt Morgan and his men buried when they were the Morgan traders during the Civil War.
So I think this was a landowner somewhere in central western Kentucky. Somebody who's sitting there in 1863, 64 was suddenly alarmed by word, by rumor that Confederate raiders were coming. They're trying to figure out what to do with this. It's too much to sew into their clothing to hide. And so they do the next best thing, which is to dig a hole and put it in the ground.
I think it was a farmer who was alive during the Civil War, heard about soldiers coming through, raiding, stealing, taking people's belongings, decided I'd rather put it out in the field and have it be safe than in my house and the possibility of getting robbed by soldiers.
I think it was buried in a hurry. I think whoever buried it was being chased, so I don't think they had time to bury it very deep.
How they got lost there is anyone's guess, and it could have been, person could have gotten killed, could have forgot they were there. Obviously it was a lot of turmoil in Kentucky at the time. We weren't on the forefront of the Civil War, but there was certainly conflict.
And while we'll never know exactly how they ended up in the ground, many feel there's a lot more out there under the dirt in some Kentucky fields just waiting to be discovered.
It inspires that little bit of hope that there's still stuff like that out there. You think every great treasure's been found, and we chase targets all day, and some days there's not a good one to be found, but it gives you that little bit of hope to keep searching, keep doing the research, keep putting the time in, and just keep going.
So, what do you think? How do you believe more than $3 million in gold coins from the 1800s ended up in the dirt in a field somewhere in Kentucky? Well, we'd like to hear from you.